You can see there. This is the initial slide which I showed to my students in the very first in-class meeting in a term. And they will then know, aha, this is a website I have to consult. You can do it right now, so please do it. This is a website I have to consult. Once you consult this website, you are asked to participate and you type in this number. That's it. The QR code is for something else. The QR code is for the materials which I've supplied, the presentation and some further materials. So once you have then this symbol, that'll do for the moment. So once your smartphone or your laptop will be in that position, that one, it'll do. A microphone, yes. Okay, we haven't started yet. Okay, I hope you're ready. Then I can start with what I really want to say. Namely, I want to talk about digitization in education. And I want to talk about various aspects of digital education. Basically, I want to focus on one point. How can we, and I saw that almost as a quotation on the videos that Carmen was presenting, how can we engage students? How can we make sure that students do their digital work before they go into an in-class meeting? And that's the most crucial point about it all. But let me first of all introduce myself. It all started 35 years ago. That shows you how old I am. And it started with this thing here. And you see a little symbol there because this is, I want to ask you a question about this. Look at this thingy, and now I'm asking you a question. Now you should see the question on your phone or elsewhere. Let's look at the results. Here's the correct answer. No one got it. It's an early home computer. So let's return to this. This is a home computer that was produced in the early 1980s. It's a computer produced by a company called Commodore at that time. And it shows you a little bit how old I am. Because everyone who's smiling now might have seen this thing. But I used it as a student to, believe it or not, to sort the bibliography of my PhD thesis alphabetically. I didn't know how to print it out because you couldn't use a printer with this computer, but you could do something, you could program it. Then I decided to use this thing in class. I programmed an animation about a grammar model. I'm a linguist, so I often have to present grammar models in class. I moved a TV set into the class. I used this thing, connected it, took me about half an hour, and then I played an animation of maybe 6 seconds in length, not more. But I could play 27 times, I could play 30 times, again and again. And I discovered there's something to using digital media which is a benefit as compared with books or blackboard, namely the multimedia effect. And that was my main point, a point which I still adhere to today. If the multimedia version of what I do traditionally is not a benefit, then I stop doing it. So we have to create benefits from what we're doing digital. Not just converting a text into a digital format. No, there must be more to it. And that's what I learned with this thing. It then went on in the 1990s, and now I had a team where we produced CD-ROMs, linguistic CD-ROMs. If today I give the name CD-ROM to my students, they might think I'm talking about the Italian capital, because no one knows what CD-ROMs are anymore. But we produced them, and I had an idea which was really absolutely silly. I gave the CDs to my students, put the students into a computer room, and told them, now go through chapter 1. And I stood in the back and watched them. And you know what happened? Nothing. Because they didn't know what to do, they didn't learn, they just clicked here and there, but with no effect. So the second lesson I learned in the 1990s was I have to create very clever practical material, questions, question designs, additional tasks. But I do not just have to give the digital material to the students, then nothing will happen. That was the second lesson I learned. Then I went on at the beginning of our new century to create a channel, a video channel, and a platform which is called the Virtual Linguistics Campus, which is today the largest platform around, and the YouTube channel is the largest around. So we, and now it's a team behind it, it's always a team effort, we became larger and larger, and in the end, about 2010, we had everything digital. We thought the whole world, or at least Germany, should know us, but they didn't, because we forgot one thing. We still have to publish. These are German books. The analog world is still there. So if you don't publish, then you're not really accepted in the academic world. So we published, and all of a sudden it exploded. Everyone knew us, and even the traditional people now, they discussed things with us, they accepted us, they acknowledged us, they criticized us heavily, of course, but we became known. Well, and these are the two robot projects which I conduct today: HART, humanoid emotional assistant robots in teaching. So we're using robots. And the second one, Robot Prax, takes humanoid robots into the school education system to acquaint youngsters with humanoid robots and the digital principles behind them. So now you know a little bit about my digital life and about some benefits already. This is what I want to do today. Digital teaching and learning, first of all. Then we will say something about the prerequisites for a functioning digital approach. And finally, I want to say something about assessment, which was part of the negotiations before I came here, that I should include assessment, which is so important and is often neglected. Okay, let's talk about digital teaching and learning first. It all starts with this image, which you must have seen because it's the only copyright-free image on the internet about teaching in the past. It looks like this. Teacher in front, wonderfully organized students, all listening. Did they? Well, not all of them. And some of them even had better things to do or were asleep. And some of them tried to read. They tried to reproduce the same thing the lecturer did in class, if they could read at that time. This is all identical today. Nothing has changed, at least not in Europe. And I'm obliged really to say, with few exceptions in the whole world, this is still the standard form of teaching at the universities in the world. There are, of course, exceptions, probably the people in this room, but in general, this is teaching. Frontal teaching, a person standing in front delivering knowledge, which today everyone has on the web. It's there. You don't have to do it anymore. And students are still asleep, or here, they try to read as well, but today they use digital devices to do that. But essentially it's the same. So what do we have to do? Well, many people say, if this is teaching of the past, I want to modernize it. Teaching consists of two phases. First of all, there's a content delivered, somehow, by a person, by a book, somehow. And then you deepen the content somehow, for example, by doing homework, additional tasks. Now, many people in the world think, okay, we're living in the digital age, let's digitize that. They introduce classroom technologies. I have two of these technologies here, PowerPoint, data projector under the ceiling. We already use our smartphones as classroom technology. Okay, what about the phase? The second phase, well, here there's a miracle word for all of us in the world, which is PDF. We make available PDF documents wherever possible. Scripts, tables, just documents. I don't know how many billion PDF documents have been generated in the recent past to support teaching and learning. Some people, especially in Europe and in the United States, they put a camera up like this in the lecture hall and have themselves recorded. You call that live digitized lecture. What is the effect of that? Here, this is my symbol here. The effect is this, that students don't come anymore. If you record yourself and you simply reproduce what you do in class, make it available on your learning management system, people don't come anymore. Why? Why should they? Of course, you can have obligatory class attendance, then they have to come. And then they bore themselves to death if the same thing is repeated. So this is not a good idea at all. This, by the way, is my symbol for self-directed, self-guided learning. So you have to do it on your own. So in other words, this digital augmentation or digital enrichment of classical teaching and learning does not work. No chance. It is a cosmetic correction of traditional learning, but nothing else. It's not what we have to do when we want to go further in our 21st century. So what we really have to do is this. Content delivery has to become fully digital. Or to formulate it really sharply, the computer becomes the teacher. That sounds bad at first sight, because then immediately the question comes up, and what will we do as teachers? Will we become unemployed? No, we won't, because there's a second phase, the deepening phase. The former homework phase, and this phase is now the new in-class phase. I don't have to tell you this in detail, you know that from your flipped classroom approaches. So this is called the digital integration. Not digital enrichment, but now fully integrated. You cannot do without this phase, because here is the content, and the content is digital and online. I'm not talking about CDs or DVDs anymore. So online content. Well, what does it look like? Here's the second option. The second option, the deepening phase, is online too. Then you have an online course. There are some universities who offer, which offer online courses. That's a matter of university policy. The big online courses, the so-called massive open online courses by platforms like Coursera or edX in the United States, we also offer such courses. They normally don't have a deepening phase, and that's why they run so badly. They are just video plus multiple choice, and that's basically it. So this is the digital integration model with the main component here, the online content which students have to go through by themselves. This you can call blended learning. And now you can offer these things in two variants. Variant one, which I call the chain model. You have number one is the blue one, you have an online phase, then the second online phase, then you meet in class, then you have two further online phases, then you meet twice in class, and so on. So online and in class phases are organized like a chain. The second version is the cone model. You have an online phase, and straight afterwards the matching in-class phase. Then the next online phase and another in-class phase which matches the online phase in content, and so on. And as you know already, here you have the two models, the flipped and inverted classroom. You call it flipped classroom throughout. As Paul Lam already said, I draw a terminological distinction between flipped and inverted classroom. I will tell you why in a second. And in fact, it's this model which now almost revolutionizes university teaching all over the world. What does it look like? Let's look at the flipped classroom first. Content delivery is primarily based on a short video. And the video has to be gone through by means of self-directed learning. My symbol for self-directed learning, these are the methods underneath that line. The videos are relatively short, normally 6 minutes. There have been international studies about video length, not longer than 6 minutes. Well, and then you meet in class. And in class, you have a new role for the former teacher. The former teacher has now become a coach. A coach who helps the students by deepening the content which was taught via this video. And in class you need some options here. You have an interactive whiteboard as my symbol for the fact that you somehow have to save the content that is generated in class. Could be via a blackboard, even where you take a photo and publish it on the web. So you have to somehow store the content that is generated in class as a summary or as main points. This model, I hope you agree, is fairly simple. And I doubt very much that this could be the blueprint for university level teaching. It's not enough. It is used, and this is my symbol here, at schools. Many German schools use this model. They call it flipped classroom. In the United States, they use this model. The original two names, Aaron Sams and Jonathan Bergman, the founders of the flipped classroom, they have in fact established this term, which came first about in 2000. So it has been a relatively long development, but the model is simple. I think it's too simple for university teaching. And so I prefer this model and make it more complex, and I prefer the term inverted classroom as the university model. You can use the term flipped classroom whether you like or not. I draw this distinction, and here you see the distinction. The content, first of all, is not just a video. Aaron Sams once said to me when he was in Marburg, learning is not just video. This is a key sentence. We need more. We need texts, we need text links, we need bibliographical sources, we need, and that's the symbol here, multimedia, animation, simulations. So a whole arsenal of digital elements to deliver the content. And the methods are not just self-guided learning, we also integrate the social networks. We integrate what is called, and that's a worldwide movement, open educational resources. Before you create a video yourself, check the internet. There's so much information which is useful, you don't have to produce it all. And open educational resources are new methods which come in here. The in-class phase, here you see an actual photo of a class which I conducted, and it had 45 students in that class. They sit around tables and work together, deepening the content on the basis of predefined tasks. They use the social networks, they use interactive documents, they use their smartphones, and so on and so forth. It's a bit more complex. Now, this model doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? Why can't it work? Let's go back to the past. When you had a seminar or a lecture, and your teacher asked you, by next Thursday, read from the book written by Miller, page 1 to 25. What did you do? Did you read it? 3% of the students read it on average. 3%. So what did teachers do? They repeated the whole thing in class because they knew they wouldn't read it anyway. What do we have to do if they don't go through this content? Then we can forget about phase 2. Then the whole model is doomed to death. So we need something in between. And this in between is the mastery test. It's a test, an online test where students can document their knowledge, and I deliberately say knowledge, not competencies, knowledge, and where the coach for phase 2 knows how well prepared the students are. I'll give you some values in a second. But already I tell you, it's about 75% in my classes of the students that do the preparation. Okay, this was the situation in 2016. Very quickly, what can artificial intelligence now do? For those who are interested, in artificial intelligence system, we can now work with the digital data. In these 2 phases, we have digital data. We can develop student models on the basis of digital data and can advise students either with soft bots, chatbots, or with humanoid robots. That's one option. It's an old option. In the 1980s, you call this intelligent tutoring system, so it's relatively old. Alternatively, you can ask, is there any more help in this phase available? And again, I would say yes. If we use humanoid robots, they might be able to help. And in looking at this, there's a third option. If the robots now can access this data, they can do something for us. They can advise the students and can take over office hours. Now at this moment, if I say this sentence in Europe, they want to throw me out of the room. In Asia, I'm a little bit more on the safe side, I think, because your approach to robots is a little bit different and more positive than the one in Europe. But we are already offering the robot office hour once a week for 2 hours, and officially starting in April. Test phase is over, and then you can see that tomorrow, the application. All right, this is the model. This is 21st century teaching. And now we have to ask the question, how does it work? What are the prerequisites? Well, we have a number of felicity conditions, and I'm very grateful for the discussion with Paul Lam last year, because we discussed that over a cup of coffee, and then we found out that it's these 5 points which I'm going to mention now. So I took a little bit over from CUHK, and I'm very grateful to these discussions. Point number 1. We need high quality digital content. I think I've already mentioned that. It is not enough to create a video, it's not enough to create a PDF document, it's not enough to have a PowerPoint presentation which you convert into digital format. That is not enough. It won't work. I'll show you what it looks like in a second. Then you need incentives for your students. Incentives to do it. The material can be excellent. If they don't access it, no chance. So you have to award them somehow. I show you what we do in this respect. The in-class phase must be very carefully planned. I was very impressed when I saw yesterday the humanoid robot here at HUAK, University of Hong Kong, and CLEAR, where first approaches about the planning of an in-class phase conducted by a robot have been taken, and there are the 2 programmers, Kevin and Oscar. Congratulations, you're doing very well on that point. So very well planned in-class phases are of utmost importance, not just some tasks which are simply delivered. You have to plan that in advance. Varied electronic assessment, you see this frame here and there. I'm using the smartphone in class at the very beginning to check the knowledge of my students before I begin with the actual training process. You have the system uReply here at the university. I use Pingo, a German system, but they're essentially the same. So a live voting system in class to check whether the students actually have mastered the content. Content questions, not just silly questions like what is the weather like or did you like my lecture? No, real questions about the content. Well, and finally, these models are relatively young. They have to be evaluated all the time. I cannot leave it as it is. I permanently change and adapt the model, and I want to have the opinion of my students. Am I doing right, or do I have to change something? And during the past 10 years, during which I've been using this model, I have to change a lot. And it all depends on the opinion and the interaction between the students and me. Okay, let's look at these, and let's look at the procedures which are now important for a course. This is a course called Introduction to Linguistics, or Fundamentals in Language. It consists of 15 units, 1 unit per week, 15 weeks a semester. Now, what do we have to do in order to make this class, the inverted classroom or flipped classroom, work? First of all, a very solid preparation of the students. When the students come to us, they have no idea about digital learning. They cannot do it. So we have to train them to do it. We have to tell them what to do. We do this with the first unit called Class Preliminaries. I will look into it in a second. Then the students have to go through the content, 1 unit per week, ideally. They can also do it all at the same time. They could do it at the end. But ideally, we want them to focus on 1 unit per week. And they have to do it in terms of self-guided content acquisition. Before each unit, before each in-class meeting, we have to look at the students' performance. I call this just-in-time measures. We're looking at the performance of the students in terms of digital material access, electronic test results, and their general digital behavior. We do it via our platform, and now with new methods, we use robots to do that. So we need information about each student very precisely. How well did you prepare before we do the classroom session generative grammar, for example. Well, and finally, the deepening phase itself. As it says here, the in-class meeting has to be prepared bit by bit, and don't do the same every week. Then students bore themselves to death. Oh, it's another task again. No, you have to use different methods. You have to give them work and then ask questions in between, then activate them again. So don't just give them a piece of paper with 5 questions written on it and tell them work. That won't work. Well, and finally, evaluation. All our classes have a final unit where students can give their opinion about everything in that class, online of course. So, before class start, the preparation, what do we do? Students, especially first-term students, when they come to us, we have 1 week time to prepare them about everything. And we want them, after that 1 week, to arrive well prepared to the first in-class meeting. So we want them to turn up in our classroom and are well prepared about language and linguistics, and they have never done anything in this respect. This is hard to do. What do? We first of all give them the Inverted Classroom Manifesto. I put it up in your folder. You have the link to the folder. I uploaded it this morning. I forgot it yesterday. So you can look at it. It's a 2.5 page piece of paper where we tell the students what we are doing and why we are doing it. That's the first thing. By the way, we teach in English, so everything is in English, so the Inverted Classroom Manifesto too. Secondly, we write a welcoming mail. 7 days before class start. Immediately we tell our students one thing which for German universities is absolutely unusual. Namely, we tell them, bring your phones and bring your laptops and open them when you come into class. Don't hide them, because normally you have to hide them. So bring them along, be prepared, and go through the class preliminaries. So that's the first thing. And then for other classes, which are not first-term classes but higher, we also offer a diagnostic electronic exam to find out where are they good, where are they bad. And the rate of doing these exams, which is optional, is about 45%. So 45% of the students of higher classes optionally do these diagnostic exams, which you normally offer on Sundays where they are at home. So that's the preparation. The class preliminaries themselves is a unit, a multimedia unit, which consists of video advice, which consists of components such as system check. Very important for students. Check your computer, whether it does all the jobs that it has to do. You know, there are student flats where they protect themselves with firewalls, and then something might not work. So system check is very important. And then perhaps a mock assessment. Just try one of these electronic assessments, whether they work, on the basis of a silly question. Okay, so these are class preliminaries, and then advice on online learning and online assessment, all video-based and text-based. The units themselves, these 13 content units, they are all introduced by a short video which we call unit advice. And you see, it's not only me, it's also some of my research assistants who have created such videos where they tell in less than 2 minutes the students what they have to do in a particular unit in order to be most effective. Very effective little videos. The videos present the content and they present the menus. Well, and then we have the virtual sessions, and these are the contents. This is each one virtual session for each unit. And since 2001, these virtual sessions have had the same structure, no change. And that is an important point. This is reliability for the students. Everything looks, at least from the point of usability, identical. There are no changes, no bad surprises for the students. It is all in the same structure. Okay, this is what the content looks like. Just one screenshot. You see here is the menu. All these things are so-called open educational resources. That is, you can reuse that. You can use the texts if you wish, download them, copy them. All you have to give is our URL and the authorship. That's it, but you can use it. In this multimedia content, you have a link straightforwardly into the YouTube channel. If you click on a link, then the YouTube video is loaded, which explains the content. We have access to an interactive tutor where students can apply self-assessment without the lecturers knowing about this. We unfortunately have to create in Germany EPUB formats because unlike Hong Kong, we have places where we do not have internet access in Germany, so we are well behind, and so we have created a method that students can access these materials even without internet access. And finally, this is a very efficient thing. For each unit, we have created 10 guiding questions, not more than 10, sometimes less. Guiding questions where we tell the students, if you can answer these questions, you've mastered the content. They are very efficient, and when we ask students, what do you actually use? They use everything, but no one uses not the guiding questions. So they seem to be highly important. Well, what do we do before the in-class meeting now? So this content, digital content, has gone through. What do we do now? As teachers, or as coaches, I'm not a teacher anymore, what do we do now? Well, we look at the accesses of the students accesses of the online content. Just-in-time access. So we're looking, let's say this is the unit which is now the one which is to be taught in class. We are looking at the online accesses of this unit. We call it just-in-time access. So within the 7 days period before this unit, we are checking how often were the students on that website, how many sites of that website did they consult. Of course, consultation or clicking on a website does not say anything about learning. But nevertheless, it's an important measure. And then we're looking, and you see 80% is the average of the students who actually do it, who go through the content. There's still 20% of the students who don't care. And 80% is pretty high. I haven't been able to reach a higher value. I would like to have more, but I don't think I ever will. Then we're looking at the mastery worksheets, we call them, the tests, the online tests. And here the value is 76%. 76% of the students pass the test before the in-class meeting. If you have 100 students in class, 80 of them do the online content, 76 do the mastery worksheets, and now guess how many students are coming? 80. So statistically, 4 students are unprepared. And really, I don't care. These 4 students can remain where they are. And immediately when I see them in class, I can identify them. I can ask them what was happening, Champions League last night, or what did you do? So you can identify them quickly. Okay, and this is now the incentive for the students. Here you see an anonymized view of the tests. We are in Unit 9. So at the moment, 9 of these tests come into go into the calculation. For example, this student has 9 worksheets out of 13 and has reached the senior level at this point, which is 80 to 89%. This is our digital badge system. If students click on that badge, they get an image and can download that, and believe it or not, what do they do with them? They put them on the back of their laptops so that I can see them in class. I'm an expert. Or in class, I often hear something where the students ask their neighbor, expert? No, senior. And then in class, they're doing a test to raise their level. This is an enormously important incentive, the digital badge system. And you see, it is a badge system which changes from week to week. Now, if this student here, who is senior at the moment, moves on to session 10 and doesn't do the worksheet, then the percentage will be lower than the senior percentage, and this student will probably change to junior. So the badge system is a sort of living badge system. It's not a final badge system. At the end, of course, each student has a final badge. At the end. But during class, they're permanently changing and they're highly motivating. This is the in-class meeting itself. Well, it looks similar to this here. Not really, not quite. First of all, the introduction, preparation is live voting. I did that with you at the very beginning. Now we're increasingly using our robot to do the job. And then I don't have to do anything anymore. I just touch the backhead and then the robot does the job. And I can even consult the students during this live voting. And here at CUHK you can do the same thing. If these guys go on like this, then you will have the same available over here. Support is my role. You see, this is my position. This is where I am. You can hardly see me. So I'm not at front anymore. I'm consulting, I'm talking to the students, I'm advising, I'm moving through the rows. This, of course, is terrible here. I cannot move through the second row. So we need different architectures, as we will see in a second. Well, and one thing I'm very proud of, that PowerPoint is out. I'm not using PowerPoint anymore in this sort of scenario. There's no need for PowerPoint. All I do is here on the big screen, I present these live votings and I present the goals. I'm writing down the goals. What are we going to do today and what are we here for? But that's it. But I don't need PowerPoint. And we do need, as you can see here, different architectures because the room in which we're teaching has changed. We have the internet as an omnipresent tool. We have students scattered all over the place. They sit together in groups. We have teachers whose position is not clear because I'm all over the place. And we have communication possibilities which are multiple in kind. We need new rooms, and here they are. These are the architectures we need. If you Google 21st century classroom design, you can Google it right now, you find these architectures. And if you're here at this university, you're lucky, because you have such a room. I was there last year and I think this is fantastic. And Paul has told me they've even got a better one now. So I definitely need a photo to show around in the world. These are other rooms. BMW in Germany, they have such a room, but they don't use it. Because they don't know how to use it. But they have it. And so we need new architectures which get rid of the row architecture and make classroom interaction more collaborative. So these are the properties of teaching and learning in the 21st century. We've talked about them: individualization, flexibility. The role of the teacher has changed. I'm now a coach, a guide. I'm no longer the sage on stage, the wise man. Cooperation, collaboration, these are the central principles. And internet access, of course, and the use of the internet in all phases, well, that's essential. And finally, robots and AI will increasingly support us in these teaching scenarios. Final remarks about assessment. If you test something, you should first of all ask yourself, where? Where are the positions, the location of testing? Here is our module again, or our course. Sometimes modules have one course, sometimes several. I take a course. Now, in the units, you have two options of testing. The integrated test, you saw earlier on our interactive tutor, and the formative test, that's the mastery test. The test, you do one test per week. So here is the image: inverted classroom, mastery learning, the formative test, interactive tutor, and now the formative test. And I'll show you one test in a second to give you an idea what they look like, these tests. Here it is. We have given up multiple choice. Until 2016, we have been using multiple choice tests and then we found out that the results of multiple choice tests are independent of all other class activities. Students simply passed them or not. They didn't have to come. And that's, of course, something we did not want. Here are such tests. So we have questions about this test. I will say something about it. We have input tasks. This is the old multiple choice test. Here we have counting tasks. And multiple choice was found out not to be a suitable test format, so we've given that up. So here are the tests now. Tests where we test facts, knowledge, deliberately, not competences. So let's look at this test in particular. This is the new test which replaced our multiple choice test. We call it dynamic choice. You see a question, and then you are given one answer option. Let's say the question is, who is the emperor of China? And the answer is Rudolf I. Now you have to decide, is it true or false? Of course it's false. Then you see Herbert II. It's also false, and so on. So here we are in the situation. The test is far more difficult, and the result of the students, when we introduced it, their reaction was, we don't like it. So we won the game. And this is the test we're now using. We're using input tasks and this task for our mastery tests. And they work very well. In the degree program, we have the electronic exam at the end of each class. And now we do it electronically, as an electronic exam. Here you see our computer pool. This is where students are writing an electronic exam. Okay, this is what it looks like, 2017. We have given up multiple choice in these tests as well, because we're now testing competences. Competence tests in terms of electronic exams are extremely difficult, because you need new questions. Here you see such questions, counting tasks. You have to count the number of elements in a set. Okay, so maybe I'll give you an example from geography, a silly example. You see 25 city names on the screen, and you have to decide how many of them are capitals of the country. So you see Beijing, Shanghai, Hanoi, Saigon. You know, it's becoming difficult now. And the more you integrate here, the more difficult it becomes, and in the end you give a number as a result. Now you can apply this to any subject. I found out recently, terms from physics, linguistic minimal pairs, words in the vocabulary, and so on and so forth, counting tasks. We have 170 personal computers, and in the past, and all our colleagues use a safe browser that prevents students to go online during an electronic exam. We're doing the opposite, because all these tests are competence tests, and Googling does not help really. I could Google Hanoi, Saigon, Shanghai, Beijing. I would do it once and then I would run out of time. So we said, if this is so, then we can allow the internet, which we're doing now. Students have internet access during electronic exams. This is what they're doing. They're opening a second browser, or a third, or a fourth, or a fifth. And they're not loading Wikipedia anymore, because it doesn't help. What they do is they load qualified websites for their subjects, which they learn about in the in-class phases. So one of the most common questions in my in-class phases is, Mr. Hanke, is this a good website for phonetics? They'll say, okay, let's look at it, yes. Media competence through the back door. This is what we want. And so they're coming up with tabs opened here about syntax, about phonetics, but not Wikipedia and not the simple Google search format. They have to use tabs, by the way, because they can't use smartphones for reasons of equality of chances. That's why they have to use the computer where they're sitting. This is, so what they're doing, not this really anymore. We have, in these exams, we allow internet access. We've written 600 exams in the meantime since 2017. And the average time on the web was 10 minutes for a 90 minutes exam. That's what we found out. And when we asked the students, what did you do there? Well, we verified an answer which was correct anyway. So it was a waste of time for them. And they're increasingly not use the internet anymore. So, these are the tests and a summary. So now you see the full model, the full program, a degree program, assessment. Where can we assess? We have an entrance exam, we have a final exam. we have diagnostic exams on module level, and we have the final exams of a class or a module. And if you look at the format of exam, then only the final exam, which is a BA or master thesis, has to be in written format. There is no option to do it electronically at the moment. The final exam for a module is in most cases also written. Let's say you have to write a term paper or something like it, then you can't do it electronically. However, the options are there. The entrance exam today must be electronic. No one has the time to correct these things. So many universities offer entrance exams, or many courses have entrance exams, as I said, the so-called diagnostic exams. So all these are electronic exams, and if you can do it, you can convert each final test exam into electronic formats. On the basis of modules, you have the inverted classroom, units, you have the inverted classroom. Well, in there, I told you, you have these exam options. First of all, you can also offer a diagnostic test. Let's say 10 questions about the content prior to each unit. How good are you? What sort of recommendations can I give you if you are not good? Then we have the integrated self-assessment, things for students to play around with. Some people use the term gamification in this context. Then we have the formative mastery tests, which tell us how well are the students prepared before the in-class meeting. Well, and finally, you may even have summative tests, let's say analysis tasks, which have to be done after an in-class meeting in order to gain credit points. This is the situation today, and in any case, these tests can be electronic tests, so you don't have to use written tests here anymore. Thank you very much.
This is my little experiment that I've been running at Hong Kong U for the last 3 years. And maybe we can just take this as a small case study in a teacher just trying a flipped classroom and seeing how far I got with this particular experiment. I'm a landscape architect and a practitioner, and I've been teaching for 10, 15 years. As Paul said, I teach design, I teach sustainable principles. I teach this class in sustainable principles as an undergraduate entry class, first year undergraduate within the Hong Kong U Common Core. And I decided about 3 years ago to flip it into a flipped classroom format, and I've been doing a little bit of research on this phenomenon over the last 3 years. What I'm presenting today is the research undertaken by Lynn and myself as really to study the social aspects of flipped classroom. We really had this question as to why a flipped classroom might or might not work. And so, because we're running a large class size, I have 120 in my class, I wanted to understand the mechanism. So, forgive me, there's quite a lot of theory in this, quite a lot of educational theory. Forgive me because I am a landscape architect talking educational theory, so if I get it wrong, hopefully you'll be understanding. As Professor Hanke very rightly says, the lecture auditorium is dead. This is a really, everybody who does a flipped classroom seminar has this photograph that we all hate. I mean, why are you sitting in this format? This is really not a good format to receive information. But we all have the same problem, common learning problems, common experience, and that is a common experience for both students and instructors. We're all bored in the lecture format. I find lecturing extraordinarily tiring because I'm having to do so much, just as you were saying. I'm competing with films, I'm competing with books in terms of delivery of information in a lecture format. I'm really at the bottom end. And I'm having to do so much clowning around and acting to get people's attention. I thought you were doing very well that you had 75% in class. Most people only have 50% of students turn up in class after midterm. Professor Sam McGillman from Emory University made a very good observation recently in our Common Core reflections. He said that 25% of the class will love you. 50% of the class will turn up but will ignore you. 25% of the class will hate you, and there's very little you can do about that. You know, people, they have different motivations for being there, but we know that the lecture auditorium is working against us. The communication is unidirectional. It's just from me to you. You guys aren't doing anything at the moment. You're just listening to me. So that's all you can do. It's exactly the same as being in a cinema. You're surrounded by 100 people in the cinema, but your experience is a solitary experience. It's just you and the film. You can't discuss it with anybody, you can't interact with anybody, you are just sat there receiving. And that is the problem. Participation is passive, it's repetitive, it's individual, solitary, there's no engagement between students, and learning is simply restricted to the receipt of knowledge if you stay awake. One of the great tests of the lecture auditorium is going to sit in one of your colleagues' lectures. We complain that our students fall asleep. You've got to sit in somebody else's lecture. I've fallen asleep in colleagues' lectures. It's very embarrassing. And students notice. I've also watched football in colleagues. Anyway, so most students, most instructors feel bored and attendance is very poor. This is where the flipped classroom comes in, and many of us have been trying this experiment, thinking about this experiment of inverting the classroom. Rather than doing the homework at home, you do the homework in class. You do the receipt of knowledge, the foundation of that work you do online. So you have pre-class activities, in-class activities. Absolutely correct. It doesn't have to be watching videos. It can be readings, it can be exercises, it can be research. Anything really to set a framework on a subject. I want to tell my students what I'm talking about, what we're studying this week. 6-minute videos. I reduced my lectures. I started this course as a lecture course, but I got bored of it. And I've now reduced those lectures down into 6-minute videos. That is a great disciplinary exercise. If you take a 90-minute lecture and you take 6 minutes out of that, what 6 minutes are you going to have? And you realize how much time you spend in the lecture auditorium just telling stories. You know, the 6-minute actual content you can do. In-class activities, group exercises, discussions, coursework, etc. is both to confirm understanding and knowledge, but also to apply that knowledge, getting to a slightly higher order of thinking. A theoretical foundation. I apologize for my theory coming in here. I wanted to draw on this particular aspect of regulation in learning, and 3 definitions that had been put out. Self-regulated learning is basically I do it by myself. It's my task, it's my goal, it's my plan. I just do it by myself. That's self-regulated learning. Shared regulating learning is where we do it as a group. We all work together as a group. We set the goals, we plan together. Our concept of what we're doing, our strategies that we develop, they're all group. A third definition that he gives is co-regulated learning, where we're doing it individually, but we support each other in our individual tasks. So even though I have my own tasks, my colleagues are giving me feedback and suggestions and helping me where I'm falling short, where I don't understand particular concepts. So we've, Lynn very cunningly put this into a rather lovely diagram here. Self-regulated learning, that's just the individual working on their own. Where 2 individuals come together, or 2 or more individuals come together as a group. Shared, that's a group exercise. Shared regulated learning, and where individuals support each other in their own individual learning, that's co-regulated learning. So that, we draw that from the literature. I also trying to develop this theoretical foundation, looking at what makes effective collaboration, talking about people working in groups, what is effective collaboration. This paper from Hasselwaters and Napier, this is a very famous onion diagram. I'm sure many of you have seen this onion diagram before. This is the task And to undertake this task, you need to go through various layers of getting to know each other and working together. So we can use that as a basis for our understanding of how students work together in groups within a flipped classroom. So the traditional classroom, the lecture auditorium, I'm standing at the front, you guys are all individual. This is a unidirectional interaction between me and you individually. You all know me, you have a big advantage, you can all see me. I have no way of communicating with you guys, there's so many of you, because I can't talk to everybody at the same time. So there's no discourse, there's no dialogue. This is essentially a passive, it's essentially a quiet environment. It's just me talking and hopefully you're listening. So the flipped classroom, as we've seen some wonderful photographs already, we get students to work in groups, hopefully they talk to each other, they face each other, they work together, and then the instructor becomes the guide, becomes the spirit guide maybe, to help develop that discourse. So this becomes a noisy environment. These guys are talking, these guys are active, these guys are engaged with each other, they are facing each other, they're not facing the front. So everything is changed within this classroom. Within the traditional flipped classroom, within the conceived flipped classroom, we have a problem though. The pre-class activities is still unidirectional. These guys are working in isolation on individual tasks, on their research, on watching videos, and maybe they're interacting with the teacher, maybe not. When they get into class, they're working in groups. Pre-class, typically they're not working in groups, they're working by themselves. So this is still an individual, isolated learning experience. And we had the idea that maybe we needed to look at this in the same way as we looked at the in-class activity. So we've been running this experiment on socializing the pre-class activity within a flipped classroom. Is it possible to extend the group structure that we have in class to a pre-class context? Can we get them to work together and talk together before they come into class so that we have a continuum between the pre-class and the in-class exercise? So this experiment is looking to promote this shared regulated or this co-regulated learning within groups. Even though these students are physically in different places, in different geographies, they're in their rooms, many of them are working at different times of night. Can they use their social media? And they're all on social media, as we know, and it changes every year. I have a little exercise. I ask them what social media they're using to communicate. And I say, I bet I can guess. And every year I get it wrong. I say, okay, you're going to be using WhatsApps. And they say, no, we're using Facebook Messenger. And I say, so, okay, next year I say, you're using Facebook Messenger. And they say, no, we're using WeChat. And it goes on and on and on. And we run this fun exercise in class where I get them to get their phones out and to list out all the social media platforms that they have on their phone. And then to sort them into those that I use every day, those that I use maybe once a week, those I never use. And of course, the ones you never use, and a great long list of things that are now obsolete. In fact, they're only using one or two every day. Some of the boys get a bit carried away and they sort of, okay, they're communicating using Tinder or one of these dating apps, but typically they're using things like Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp. So this is a socialized form that we're trying to get into the pre-class activity. So even though they are isolated physically, can we get them to communicate together? Can we get them to work together before class so that they come into class in a much more informed way? In fact, what I really want them to do is this. Not only just work in their groups before coming to class, I want those pre-class groups to work together, to interact together. This puts me even further out of the picture. I'm trying to put myself out of a job here. I want them to do all the work by themselves. So ultimately, I want this sort of regulated learning between the various groups online before they come into class. So this is my course. You can check it out online, CCHU 9001, and we all have these rather peculiar numbers to our courses. It's a course about sustainability principles. It's a very simple course. Sustainability is a very difficult subject to talk about. It is so complicated, it is so interrelated, it's very, very difficult to make any cogent arguments within sustainability. So within this course, and you can see I've got typically 100, 150 students in this course, first year undergraduates mostly from across all 10 faculties at Hong Kong U. And I'm running it as a flipped classroom. But I'm looking to develop some knowledge, some understanding of sustainable principles. But the primary skill that I'm looking for is in advocacy. How do we make the argument? How, in a complex, highly interrelated subject, do we actually make a point without being shouted down? So a lot of the skill is focused on this argumentation and advocacy and the media that we use in order to make our arguments. But of course, same as everybody else, I want the students not only to acquire knowledge and skills, I want them to be able to analyze and synthesize, and at a higher order of learning to design, strategize, plan, speculate with that knowledge. So it's not just about understanding something, it's about using that and applying it in real world situations. Now this is a humanities course, so it's a completely different animal to the course we just heard about. So it's a subject that they already know, but it's a subject in which we are looking to formulate arguments and see how we can make a case in particular scenarios. So this idea of being able to get to a point where we can design and strategize with the information that we learn is quite important. And this is what we've been doing. In class, I group the students into fours. Group of 4 is my standard unit. Occasionally I need a 3 to make up the right numbers. They are in mixed groups, and I mix them. It's a positive strategy to mix the groups. I go through the class list and I make sure they're mixed by year, by disciplinary major, by gender, even by culture. I have a lot of students from the subcontinent, from India, Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Pakistan. I make sure that they're not all sitting together in a particular group. I want to use that intercultural aspect to develop a better perspective in what they're doing. And I get them to sit in class. Now you can see in the photograph here, you can see me, I'm actually standing with 2 groups. This is a standard group here for students, but I put 2 groups together, adjacent tables, so one group sits right next to another group. So they're very close together. And there's a high degree of intimacy within the setting of the class. So I have 2 groups on one table. This was last year. This year I have 2 groups on adjacent tables. These modern architects who design these educational spaces, they all come up with these kidney-shaped tables and the triangular tables, so we work around them. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to get the students to face each other, to talk to each other, to orientate onto each other as a way of promoting discussion and collaborative learning. And here's a big classroom. This is this year's classroom, photograph from last week. And you've got 120 students in there. It's very intense, and you can see the level of activity, the level of engagement within this class. Everybody's leaning over a table, leaning in. And what we see here, this is a student decided he had a particular point to make. He stands up and he makes that point within his group. It's a very dynamic, it's a very active class. This is Haley, one of the TAs here. Over here, I have 4 TAs within this class. I actually divide the room into 4, and I have one teaching assistant marshalling each of the quarters of the class. But they don't spend too much of their time getting involved. Within class, a whole series of very short activities. This activation of the class, this getting them to do something. Nothing lasts in my class more than 20 minutes. They get lost. They only lose 20 minutes of the class. We go on to something else. We do another activity. And the activities are all designed around creating these opportunities to interact with each other. The classroom is highly active, and we know from research that entry-level students are particularly engaged with this sort of learning. This is very good. I have a very similar photograph to the photograph of Professor Hank. This is me in class, just the same as you in class. I'm sat at a table with my students. My physical position in class is right in the middle. It's exactly where I want to be. I am talking to my students. Within the course of one class session, I will have a discussion with each of the groups. This year I have 29 groups. I will, within a 2-hour session, I will be able to talk to each of the groups. They will be able to ask me a question. And I think we should not undervalue as teachers our stardom. They actually want to talk to us. You know, we are the professor in their eyes. They feel privileged to actually be able to ask us a question, to be able to have a discussion with us. In the lecture theatre, I just come and then go, and they don't have that opportunity. So this has been a bit of a revelation to me. I very much more enjoy the class because I can talk to people. I can actually understand what they're doing. I can see what. I've got a couple of videos here. These are speeded up videos, not speeded up students. So again, we see 2 groups working side by side here. So we've got one group immediately in front of us. We've got a couple of students actively carrying the conversation. We've got some students a little bit further back who are listening in, some who are doing a little bit of research on their phone. They're all contributing to the group structure in different ways. We know students have different capacity, different interests within groups. But here we have 2 groups sat together. It's very important to me that groups see each other. There's the legitimization of group work. If I'm sat in a group and thinking, oh, this is miserable, I hate group work, but I'm surrounded by another 20 groups who are all very happy and carrying on working, there's a bit of peer pressure there, there's a bit of oversight. I'm not going to complain so much. Beginning of class, I have students who say, I don't want to do group work. I have no complaints after the 2nd week. They're all happy to do group work because they can see each other doing group work. They can see that it works within class. And so I use this word legitimizing. It actually sort of makes it acceptable to them. If they don't know what to do, they don't know the answer to the question, or they don't know how to approach a scenario that I put in front of them, they can just turn around and ask somebody else. How do you do this? How do you approach this? None of the work we do in class is graded. It's all coursework. It's all rehearsal for graded assignments. Okay, so what are we doing in class? Sort of things. I'm asking them to find examples. For instance, I asked them to find an example of greenwash, this idea of somebody saying, oh, my product is very green when it's clearly not very green, and the way that we manipulate and use green as an example. Or analysing examples. I give them 2 diagrams. I say, which diagram is most effective? Why is this diagram more effective than others? Please discuss in your group. Tell me how you would evaluate the effectiveness of a diagram. So we go through that. Or finding connections. This is a fun game where we look at common neuroses in Hong Kong, you know, on the strange things that we do, you know, pressing the button in the lift or on the phone, whitening products. I mean, we all have these strange tics and nervous habits, these neuroses. Is any of this related to environmental or social factors? The fact that we live in such a high density, high intensity, high-rise city. Linking theory to practice or responding to scenarios. We do a lot of scenarios. For instance, I said, what if the mainland authorities flip the switch and we have no more electricity? What happens next? And they have to sit and work in their group for 10 minutes, give me top 5 ideas as to what might happen next. This is an interesting one because if we lose electricity, half the city becomes unoccupiable. Half the people in Hong Kong live above the 8th floor. And if we don't have any electricity, we don't have any lifts. I used to live on the 50th floor. I wasn't going to walk up 50 floors every day. I'd do it once maybe. That would be it. If we lost electricity, I'd be homeless. So we can use these sort of exercises as a way of developing discussions, developing communication, making the classroom dialogic, discursive environment, adding in fun quizzes, the informal voting. We use a lot of Mentimeter here, but Kahoot and all the rest of it. In-class discussions, student-led discussions. Just this intense array of different activities. And I spend most of my time trying to think of new activities. In fact, I go to seminars really just to try and copy and borrow other people's activities, so I've learned quite a lot already today. Thank you for that. More examples, I give them a system, I give them, ask them to think of new ideas for sustainable food. We do some very quick exercises. We did this exercise yesterday. Give me your top 10 ideas to get people walking on campus. I give you 10 minutes, 10 ideas each. And then we stick them all up on the board and we shout about them, we argue about them. And underlying this is developing our understanding of walkability and measures of urban settlement. Or sometimes I give them, I say, okay, Hong Kong Youth are going to ban bottled water. Give me your best argument. How can you construct an argument to persuade the senior management team to ban bottled water? What do you choose as your argumentary points? Or formalizing a proposal, again I give them a proposal and I say, how do we present this to a state's office? Or choosing the best medium in a post-factual world. If I want to convince you of something, I am not going to write an academic paper, because you're not going to read it. If I want to convince you of something, I'm not even going to make a television show, because you're not watching television. I'm not going to write a newspaper article. I'm not even going to make a silly video on YouTube. If I want to convince you of anything, I'm going to make a meme, just a silly photograph and a silly caption underneath. You're far more likely to believe that than you are an academic paper. How do we work in that environment? So part of this argumentation and advocacy, I get them to make memes in class. So they make a funny photograph, they add a caption, upload that to the common site that we use in class so everybody can see each other's work. And then we have a discussion about why we are persuaded by these things rather than by actual facts. So making a meme is quite an interesting thing. There are some exercises we do in class that reinforce the assignments. So we do have pop quizzes which help focus the mind, which is similar to the tests that Jürgen was talking about earlier on. We do a little bit of peer review. Students do not like peer review. It doesn't seem to be very effective in this part of the world. I've even tried just using peer review with emoticons, little happy and sad emoticons. That doesn't work either. Okay, I get them to choose their own marking criteria. You do a reading response, you tell me how to mark it. What are your top 4 ideas for me judging your work? And I will judge their work by the top 4 ideas. I know what their top 4 ideas are before they do, so I'm pretty safe on this one. This is a gallery review. They've done an exercise which is an infographic diagram, again about presenting a particular argument. I say everybody has to stick their work on the wall. Some students stand by it and then argue with everybody else to try and persuade them that their infographic diagram is the most effective. So they go round and they argue with each other and they write little notes and post-it notes and put them on the wall. And at the end we have the sort of little gallery-style red dots that you put against your favourite ones and we see who the winner is. It's not a graded exercise. It's just an opportunity for students to see each other's work. This, I think, is so important. If you have a terminal paper, you have a term paper, or you have a terminal exam, there's only one person who's ever going to see that work. And they're going to be really bored. Here, everybody in class sees the work. Everybody gets to discuss the work. Everybody gets to compare their work against something else. So, this energizing of the classroom, this activation, getting things working. I make a clear distinction between coursework, things that we practice in class, and graded assignments. The graded assignments are typically individual, so the work is based on an individual effort. The coursework is typically group, so that they work together to construct their knowledge. And as I say, we're trying to do that both pre-class and in class. Well, I spent quite a lot of time making that distinction. This is just another aspect of the gallery review. So the best infographic diagrams the author has to explain. They get 30 seconds to explain their diagram. Again, it's a bit of a discipline. But it's about bringing the class together and getting them to interact together. This is just a post-it note exercise. Maybe one of those scenarios. Somebody turns out the lights, what are we going to do? If somebody turns off the electricity, all the lights go out, you would sit in here for about 4 hours waiting for somebody to come and tell you what was wrong. by which time I would have bought all the candles. So information is king. So they write their answers, they put it on post-it notes, we put it up on the board, I get students out to try and sort these, what are the common areas that different groups have been talking about, develop that into a discussion. A couple of other things that I typically construct all my assignments looking through their experience. When I'm talking to them, when I make my videos, I talk about the global situation, I talk about the Hong Kong situation. I ask them to consider it through their own personal perspective. What is your perspective on water management or saving water or using or creating more electricity or something like that? So using their personal environment, their context is very important. And as I say, seeing other students work, whether it's some sort of feedback or just observation, again is very important within the class. This is my flipped classroom space. This is what's known as the white box. It is the most heavily booked space in Hong Kong U. And that's because it's got nothing in it. It has a floor, it has a ceiling, and it has 4 walls. And that is it. And I can use it in any way I want. It can be a lecture hall, it can be a working space, performance space, gallery, workshop, anything. All the tables, all the chairs are movable, I can take them out, I can bring them in. This is exactly what I want. All the walls are pinnable. I can pin things to all of the walls. The center, and I can project in 2 directions. The design of the space is very important. Happily, I got the chance, as being an architect person, I got a chance to design this space. It took me a long time to persuade the university that I wanted nothing in it. Now it's the most popular space because I was brave enough to take everything out of it. Okay, so how do we socialize the pre-class environment? All of that was about what's happening in class, what happens pre-class. How do I get them to work together and do the same level of activity and interactivity pre-class? So we create this platform. We're using edX, given to us to use, put up all the courseware, put up all the documents, all the guidance documents, all the preparatory stuff that we heard about beforehand. I have little trailers and introductory videos that they can watch to understand the whole course. Some of the core documents, there's a list of sustainability principles that I need them to know, I need them to understand. And then week by week we go through various subjects and we draw back on those core documents as we go through. I know pre-class, I'm asking them to do some research, I'm asking them to watch the videos, asking them to do an egg late at night. We use the YouTube analytics on the videos. I look at the peak watching hours, I don't know whether it's the same in Germany or not. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, the Germans obviously far more robust. The football that runs through to about 1 o'clock. So here in Hong Kong, it's between 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning. Fine. If that's when they're going to do the work, that's great. As long as they do the work, as long as they're working together. And of course they work in different places, different halls, some at home, etc. So I asked them to work in exactly the same groups as the working class. Same 4 people pre-class to undertake simple tasks and to share the output. As I say, they're communicating using WhatsApps and Facebook Messenger. They are doing most of their written work on Google Docs. Google Docs is my friend. Quite simply, it's revolutionized what I've done because they can see what their contribution is. Within a Google Docs document and a text that they write, I can see the individual contribution of students. That gives them a lot of confidence against free riding, that their contribution can be recognized. So they can see their own group mates work, they can understand, and we can use a little bit of peer pressure to make sure that that is balanced. Of course, because I'm talking to every group in class, if there's any problem, they can directly address me about problems. So this family of learners, can we develop these groups into something that has a sense of shared responsibility, not just for individuals working together. So each group gets its own web page. They upload everything to the web page. Every group of 4 has its own web page. We set this up at the beginning of class. This is one of the group's web pages. All their coursework, whether it's a written document pre-class, or whether they're making a proposal, or making a meme, or taking a photograph, or this is a sorting game, all of it gets uploaded to the group page. So anybody in the group, plus myself and the TAs, we can see what they're doing. Halfway through the class, of the course, I can sit with the group and say, okay, let's see what you've done so far this year. This includes all their assignments. They're very reluctant about assignments to start with. I threw assignments in, I said, okay, it's only you and your group mates who can see these assignments. But it gets away from this idea that assignments are somewhat private and secretive, and if I don't do a good assignment, then nobody knows about it. I'm really relying on this group structure to give them a little pressure to do the assignment and to do it well. And they've responded very well to this. They like being able to see all of this, and this sharing and being able to relate their own performance to everybody else's performance is quite good. So the things we're doing online, obviously the video watching, responses. We have Dr. Michael Patello, who spoke here last year, has developed this VideoVox commenting tool, which is a special way of students commenting on videos, time-stamping their comments to a video track. Readings, a lot of readings, research questions, comparative analysis scenarios, etc. A lot of different things we can do online. I fully agree we should not be relying on videos as the primary mode. We need this multimodal thing. We need lots of different things. You can see one of my videos here. I have 25 videos in my course. That's quite a lot of videos to watch. I have to make sure I change my shirt every time, otherwise it's incredibly tedious. But we're doing online quizzes. This is just a BBC quiz. I can do this quiz. People love doing quizzes. Quizzes are a really good way of conveying information. We all do them online. It's very curious. Newspapers, news media understands this. We should use the same. And of course, this sharing of work, the reading responses, I do 3 reading responses. These are just very brief responses to set texts. The first is a written response. Second is an audio response. Third one is a video response. It's actually the same work. It's just a different medium. This is the video response. 2-minute video, upload to Flipgrid here. So we're using Flipgrid, which is a file sharing platform, allows them to see each other's videos. I just open this up for 2 hours during a class session. I say you can watch each other's videos during class, and then I'll shut it down so that they can get some oversight. This is a super, super exciting exercise for them. I didn't understand why. Why are they so energized by watching each other's videos? And then I realized that the reading response videos they shoot it as a talking head video in their bedrooms. And what they want to see is each other's bedrooms. What have we got on the wall there? What's hanging on the wall? What have we got that poster? And they get terribly excited about it. Even though I tell them this is going to happen, they get very excited about it. So again, sharing the work. Okay, I just wanted to run through one one exercise that I ran, linking the pre-class to the in-class activities. I just run through. Obviously, the use of text is very important. We use text. Tech is very important. Technology, whether it's the online voting, accessing the internet for information, uploading coursework, Google Docs, they're using tech all the time, so we should use it as well. This was a pre-class activity relating to technology. So this week, I think it's week 10, we were looking at technology and the role of technology in a sustainable future. I said, okay, watch these videos, go and find this theory, the theory of technological fix. And the theory of technological fix is that no matter how big our problems are as a species, we will always find a technological answer to it. We are clever enough to fix any problem. Now, this is a theory that came out in the 1970s. I think it's been thoroughly debunked by now. And I give them a reference text to Timothy Morton's hyperobjects. Hyperobjects are things that are too big for us to understand, such as climate change. We just don't understand it. We completely have no concept of what climate change actually is. Then they have to do a group exercise. They just have to give me a 100-word response on will technology save us? Which relates back to these two in the videos. So we're linking pre-class, they have to do a little bit of exercise, a little bit of referencing, a little bit of reading. When they get into class, they've submitted these 100 words beforehand, and I put these up and I say, okay, let's read these. Just choose 5 and read them, compare them to your own, see whether other people have the same ideas as you or not. And that leads to a discussion in class. We summarize the key findings from their pre-class work. And then we switch to Mentimeter, we start voting about it. How can we gauge the optimism of the class based on this question, will technology save us? It's very interesting that the students are very technology positive. They believe that technology will save us. I don't. So but I don't care, because I'm an old person. Very young people, they'll find out, hopefully before it's too late. And then that leads on to another exercise in class where I ask them to look for an example of good technology, something that has made the future more sustainable, a bad technology, an obsolescent technology, and a technology that was never useful in the first place. Again, to try and understand a little bit more about technology and the role of technology in a sustainable future. And that leads to more discussion in class, both at the group level and at the class level. So we're linking through from the pre-class to the in-class to make all of that work. Okay, this is what I came to talk about. That's all in the past. That's me working as an experiment as a teacher, architectural teacher, just trying to find a new pedagogy because I was worried about poor student engagement. This is Lynn and myself undertaking a research study to try and understand how the socialization of the learning, putting the students in group, how does that affect their learning in a large size class, run as a flipped classroom. So the objectives does increase socialization within both the online and offline learning environments through students. How does that affect the student learning performance? So the original question we had is, why does socialized learning enhance students' learning performance in a flipped classroom? So our detailed research questions: what factors are regulated by learning context socialization, by the socialization of learning context and collaboration within a flipped classroom? How are students' learning performances, and we're separating engagement from learning outcomes, how are they affected through these factors? And how does the pre-class online socialization influence students' activities in class? We've gone a long way back to find a theoretical foundation for this. Vygotsky's social constructivist learning theory. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this. Don't worry, I had to look it up as well. 1978, I was still at school in 1978. Social interaction plays a crucial role in cognitive development. So we can use that as a starting point. Learning develops in two levels: the social level between people and the individual level. That's the inter and intra psychological learning. Also a reminder on collaboration, which is a further development of this social constructivist theory. Collaboration between people working together for common goals. Learning occurs in collaboration. And that's something that we instinctively know as teachers, but we haven't really done enough research on. And learning through dialogue. This whole ambition to make the learning environment dialogic. To date, I finished on these couple of slides. The verbal feedback from students, and Lynn is sitting with the students in class as they're working in groups and really just discussing with them what their observations are. They like more time with the group, they like the more interaction and the communication. They feel more involved in class due to the online collaborative effort. They feel that the classroom is more effective for them because they know what they're talking about when they get into class. The students are happier. I've written a couple of papers on happiness as a key metric in education. They're more interested in the course and they're happier. They feel they have a more diverse perspective and better understanding of the course material. They like the peer assistance. They like the fact that they feel like they're working in a team rather than individually. And this sort of regulation of learning, their testing of knowledge, their testing of understanding against their group mates, against other groups, is something that they're responding to very positively. And of course, they're more willing to work together. There's a greater faith in group work because they see everybody doing it all the time. Students have a very strong sense of fairness. I used to run pop quizzes and they always say, oh, another pop quiz. And I said, would you prefer it if I stopped the pop quizzes? They said, no, we need the pop quizzes. And I said, you told me you hate the pop quizzes. They said, yes, we hate the pop quizzes. And I said, okay, explain. They say, we don't like the pop quizzes, but it makes sure everybody does the work. And we would rather have the fairness than the less work. They want to make sure that everybody is contributing. From previous years, there are some positive comments about lifelong learning as well. Observations in class. I get very high attendance rates in class, typically over 95% in class. The more of the coursework is completed, we have very good coursework completion rates. Their performance, their grades are better, the quality of the work that they produce is better than it was 5 years ago. Then their skills are better, their knowledge is better, generally. I don't know whether that's just because students are getting better or whether this is effective. Maybe the research will tell me about it. What I do know is that they're far more positive about class. They're actually very positive, and these are contributions and reflections that come through third-party sources. There's a lot more activity in class, there's a lot of peer referencing, this legitimization of activity in group work, and this ability to practice. These are all things that I see in class, which I think are very positive and give me impetus to go on and do more. I would emphasize that I am an architect. I am not an educational theorist. I have never been trained to teach, just like the vast majority of people. Teachers in higher education, we are not taught to teach. We're doing this instinctively. I'm doing a little bit of research because I'm really interested to understand this. But I feel I am still learning very much, and sharing sessions like this is super important to me. Everything that I've learned, I came out of a sharing session like this. I just came and took notes and copied the best stuff and tried it out. And if anybody is in a position where they're thinking about a flipped classroom, just copying other people and seeing what works is a really good way to start. Hopefully our research will be published later this year. We should have the questionnaires and the interviews done within about 2 months, and then we'll have the summer to write that up. And so we'll be able to share those results with you.